Good morning. The South African Council for Social Service Profession has two boards that it guides. It's the Professional Board for Social Work and the Professional Board for Child and Youth Care Workers. Now, if the council felt that the work that you're doing as child and youth care workers is just support, there would not have been a need for a fully fledged board. So the only support that you are giving is when that child at night is sitting there needing healing, and you sit with them and you support them through that pain. That's the support you're giving. Is it too high? The support you're giving is that when that child doesn't have hope and thinking, I'm a useless being, and you support them and encourage them into such an extent that they believe that they can do it. And you've got testimony of how many children have done it because of your support. That's your supporting role. So this morning, I want to salute you. I want to greet you as the teachers of the children that need to be, when they need the teachers, as the healers that are there when the children are needing that healing, as psychologists when children are overwhelmed. You are at the core of carving these children. And therefore, you are a profession that's fully fledged. As a board, we worked very hard to make sure that you are regulated. And when you are regulated, you are full professionals. So allow me to greet you, you child and youth care workers. And if you can allow me to greet Undate Don Matera, Umam Angie Makwetla, the President and the Vice President of Council, all the council members present, all the international delegates, and most importantly, the reason why we are all here, our children. You know, these conferences give us an opportunity as the Child and Youth Care Board to reflect. And in reflecting, and also be held accountable, most importantly, to be held accountable. Yes, we've got the council that holds us accountable as a board, but the real accountability is with you when we're able to come back 2 years later and say, this is as far as we have gone. These are the steps that we have taken in helping to finalize the professionalization of the sector. So, since the last meeting, which was in Kimberley 2 years ago, the board has sat and held 7 board meetings. We've had 4 task team meetings, which is made up of the education and training and the professional conduct. We've also had 44 sector, section 9 and 10 committee meetings, which is your human resources, finance, transformation, and communication. So that's some of the work that we've been busy doing since we were here 2 years ago. Now, the 8 points that are reflected there on the screen are the areas that we've been working on continuously on the board and the areas that I will touch on in this presentation. Our progress with registration, you will see that from 2016, there's been a gradual progression throughout since 2016. That in 2016, we had managed to register 5,113, and now, and it has continuously, gradually been increasing, and now we have 8,122 registered child and youth care workers. And these child and youth care workers, and you, by registering, you make yourself professional. But in the registration, we've also had some challenges. Some of the challenges have been in relation to our database requiring transformation. We've also had some child and youth care workers register late. We've had also quite a few certificates being returned, mainly because of change of addresses or change of contact details. And often, then the child and youth care workers will say that, I haven't received my certification, and we'd be sitting with a whole pile that have come back through the post office. Some of the challenges we've also had with registration is incomplete registration forms, where also because of the change of your contact details, we often are not able to come back to you to say, this registration is not complete, and therefore we cannot continue. And the proof of payment is not always accompanying by the application. So you're referencing sometimes with your proof of payment and your application does not align. So we often sit as a council with money that's unaccounted for, that's sitting there, and you're sitting on the other side and saying, where's my registration certification? But we're not able to align the two together. And the department adverts that do not specify registration with the council, where it is important that for any advert, when it goes out there, to be requiring that you must be a registered child and youth care worker. So some of the monitoring that we have been doing in relation to the registration is that we've had continuous correspondence with social development, the national department, and the provincial departments on the registration requirements to say, can you make sure that you put out adverts in this way, and these are the requirements. And our communications department within council is continuously sending out messages. You're receiving messages almost on a weekly basis, and therefore we're able to also communicate about the requirements. And we've had at times had to confront the provincial Department of Social Development on the advertisements for child and youth care workers that are not specifying that you need to be a registered profession to get the positions. Now, we're always responding to your feedback. We're continuously responding to your feedback. And some of the amendments that we've had to do on the regulations were due to the feedback that we received from you, were particularly around the issue of the BTEC, where we then had to amend the regulations to make sure that with a BTEC, you can now register as a professional. Another amendment was also in relation to the sunset clause, where we had to extend it because we felt things were not moving quite at the pace we were hoping they would be moving, and therefore needed to extend it by 4 years, and therefore by 2022, that's when the sunset clause will end. Now, these regulations are sitting with the minister. They were quite advanced before the change of administration, where they were ready for signing, and we're hoping that with the change of administration, we'll be able to get the process moving quite quickly so that they can be signed into law. Now, one of our key mandates as a board is to advocate for the sector continuously. And we've had to continuously advocate, especially with the National Department, for the recognition of the NGO sector, because all of you are child and youth care workers, and we do not want the segregation of this is government, we want the sector to be managed as a complete sector. And therefore, continuous engagement is happening with the department in that regard. We've also had to have quite a lot of engagement with the department and also DPSA around the issue of the OSD, where as child and youth care workers at the moment, we find ourselves that you are having a glass ceiling of how far you can go. So our work as a board is to say we need to break that glass ceiling to make sure that there are opportunities are being opened up for you within the department. There is also the lack of a directorate and positions for CYC within the department. That's work that we're continuously engaging on. And as a board, we're looking out there for a champion who's going to help us, because we're not always within the departmental meetings, but we want a champion who's always going to be saying, have you not forgotten child and youth care sector? Have you not forgotten? Because often the discussions continue as they were always doing. And I've touched on the advertisement, but this one is particularly within the child and youth care centers, where social workers are managing in the child and youth care centers. But those are our centers as well. So it is up to us to make sure that we are able to build the sector in such a way that child and youth care workers are also able to be managers in those centers. The issue of the salary is something that is core to your hearts all the time, so I'm not bringing anything new to you. But you know, last year, towards the end of last year, we were in Parliament at the Portfolio Committee for Social Development. And the portfolio members were quite clear and vehement that this sector is a professional sector. It is inappropriate for them to be receiving stipends. It is inappropriate for the salaries to be coming late. And therefore, we had the support of the Portfolio Committee, hoping that with the change in administration, there will be proper handover of all that work that has been done, so we're not starting right from the beginning. But the Portfolio Committee are very clear, because when they understood what we do, they say, this is unacceptable that you sometimes talk about people that don't receive their salaries for 6 months. How are they supposed to be supporting children when their own children are hungry? And the issue of supervision is an issue that we are dealing with continuously as the council, where we are continuously advocating that child and youth care workers must be supervised by other child and youth care workers. Now, in developing a sector, knowledge is very important. And therefore, for the board, this has been one of our core areas where we say we need to make sure that there's access to enough universities. Now, the one area that we are praying and working very hard that by the end of our term as a board, we will be able to deliver is access to UNISA. Because by access to UNISA, it means anyone in any province is able to register. But UNISA at the moment is very excited because they've also received new leadership within their department, and we'll be meeting them on the 15th or 16th, I don't know which, 15th or 16th of July, to get the process moving forward. There's also the UWC and the DUT. I realize I was given the 5 minutes already. And we're also looking at other universities where we're saying we want to make sure that for those that don't want to do long distance, those that want to do direct contact, every university is opening up. But what we need to do now is to work very closely with the Department of Higher Education, because a lot of them are excited about the degree, but they're continuously saying funding is an issue. So we are now in a process of working closely with the minister to ensure that there can be access in all universities. Quality control has been something that has been key, because there's often confusion of what child and youth care is. And without proper qualification and without proper training material, if you are confused, then you can't be teaching others about the child and youth care. So for us, we've worked very closely with HWCTA to let them know that let's get child and youth care professionals developing the material so that we are having the right focus right from the beginning and not having people having a watered down qualification. And so some of our work has been in ensuring that all learning material that goes out there We as a board have looked at it, and we've asked, either given the feedback of how the amendments need to happen, but most important, we've also are doing quality assurance with the service providers that are providing training to the sector. Monitoring professional conduct. Now for me, especially in light of some of the revelations that we received yesterday, is that it is important, it is crucial that if there is any violation by child and youth care workers, the council exists for those to be reported. We heard very disturbing news yesterday about child and youth care workers that are trafficking and doing all kinds of things. I don't even want to think about it. But please, if that is happening, please report it, because it is our responsibility as a board to make sure that doesn't happen. So I put it out there to say any violation that's happening to children must not happen in front of you. So please report it to the council. So we have had quite a lot of work in developing the committee. And finally, looking at the continuous professional development. The CPD policy is ready, it's out there. That has, all the requirements are in place. It is ready to be introduced as a requirement for the CYCs. But we are still going through the processes of finalization of it. And as I say that, here you sit, and had we been ready as a board, you could have been able to claim the CPD points. Where's the registrar? Registrar, with your permission and my board, oh, I'm putting my head on the block here now. Can we, for this conference, we'll have to ask NSCCW as well, because it's your conference, to perhaps have certificates of, what do they call it, attendance, to provide certificate of attendance, so that when we are ready as a board, we're able to convert those certificates into CPD points. Is it possible? Is it possible? Thank you. Registrar, is that okay? So please, make sure that you get the communication of how you will get your certificates of attendance, so that when once we evaluate, you are there not missing out on this conference. Because I know the social workers were able to submit for CPD points, so why can't you? Thank you, Registrar. Now, all this work could not have been done without a passionate, I'm talking about passionate board. These are board members that wake up at 3 o'clock because they live in all these rural areas, and they arrive and we start working at 9, and we will push sometimes till 9 o'clock. And often it is them that are still pushing to make sure that we continue. So all this work was because of the board that supports all the work that we're doing. This is my co-driver, my co-pilot, Zeni, who will send you. Zeni is passionate. I had no choice but to fall in love with the sector, working with Zeni. She will hound you half the time. I'm not even sure what she's talking about. She will hound you until you know what she's talking about. She will send me an SMS at 3 o'clock in the morning. That issue of supervision, there's a meeting, etc. Do you think you can go? I'm going, but I'm in Limpopo. How am I going to go there? So Zeni's passion has helped me to understand the soul of the child and youth care practice. Thank you, Zeni. Then there's Umambesi Ngosi. Umambesi comes with an experience of the NGO sector. So sometimes as we're running around and the NGO sector and government, and sometimes as we are running around, she's able to say, in such and such a year, when none of us were practicing, this is how things were done. And sometimes those solutions are the ones that bring us back into a discussion. Because the board that we have can be very passionate. And it's often important to have someone that's bringing us back and saying, okay, all of this is happening, but what is it that we need to be doing as a board? Then there's Francisco. Francisco is leading the professional conduct. He has been hounding and continuously sending and saying, this needs to move and this needs to happen. So Francisco brings persistence where he's saying, this has to move. Yeah. Then there's Alfred. Alfred will not let go. Alfred has helped us as a board to make sure that we're always coming back to what the mandate is. If you're dealing with a board that's passionate, often you go all over. You want to do everything for the sector. But Alfred's key skill has been in refocusing us and bringing us back. And then there's Lucky. We'll sit quietly throughout and then come back and then just zoom in with what the practice is on the ground. And that has helped us a lot to move forward. Then there's Mpumi. Oh, Mpumi. Mpumi is a Gauteng board member. And because she's based in Gauteng, she's always been called on to go to all these meetings. Who can do it? Mpumi can do it. And Mpumi is always ready to do, where sometimes she's come to the council to even help with the process of registration. Then there's, I have to rush. Then there's Advocate Nalane. Advocate Nalane has the ability to look at a script in 5 seconds and say, you can't do this. And we would have been engaging with it for more than half an hour. A real brilliant legal mind. And then there's Alspat. Alspat brings the heart of child and youth care. She brings sometimes we are so bottled that she brings the youthful part, even though Alspat is older than most of us, but she brings that youthful part and where we understand with the heart of child and youth care. And then there is Dr. Lesiba, who's excellent in making sure that we've moved forward. He's leading the education subcommittee and has helped us to move forward. And last but not least, there's Mel. Mel onguzinto zonke, we have thrown everything at her. She is basically leading all the subcommittees because we'll say, Mel, can you do it? And she goes, okay, I can. So thank you, Mel. We've come, we would not really operate the way we do, especially with your writing skills that have put us out there as a real professional board. But last but not least, there's the registrar who has been a solid support to the board, where we are able to get such direction. Sometimes, as I was saying in board meetings, we get so emotional, and registrar walks in and she's able to bring us right back. Thank you, registrar, for your expertise. Finally, this board will end in 2020, and be sure to exercise a democratic right because you need to be voting for new board members in 2020. Thank you.